Welcome back to Archery Popshots, where we take a look at archery in video games. After the downer ending or endings of Far Cry 5, I was ready to give up hope, both literally and figuratively. For those of us who chose to resist and didn't walk away, we're back, and it looks like some new seeds have been planted. Far Cry New Dawn is the standalone expansion to Ubisoft's Far Cry 5, and the gameplay isn't a far cry from its predecessor. Most of the weapons are reskinned with some interesting theming, and of course we see the return of our favourite weapon, the bow. Now that the old world has ended, let's see what New Dawn has to offer. As the first weapon and the poster weapon for New Dawn, the saw launcher needs a special mention. While technically not a bow, we're not going to get a chance to mention it elsewhere. It is essentially a crossbow made from an assortment of spare parts, and it shoots saw blades that can ricochet off objects and strike multiple enemies. This is surprisingly satisfying and actually a decent weapon early on, especially in its stealth capability. Eventually, you can upgrade the saw launcher to the point where it uses mechanical and even electric methods of launch, including multiple saw blades and guided projectiles. Technically, it no longer qualifies as a crossbow at this point, so we'll leave it there, but it does get the cool nod. If this is a little too modern, or postmodern, some survivors of the collapse make use of the sacred weapon, the bow. The first bow you can craft is literally a stick and a string, kind of a throwback to the starting bow from Far Cry 4 with a crude sight. The rest of the bows that can be crafted are the same models as from previous games, with some minor cosmetic changes to reflect the improvised accessories after the collapse. The level 2 option is the slingshot, which we saw in Far Cry 5. The level 3 bow is the recurve bow, which is based off the model used in Far Cry 3 and subsequent games, with a nail as a bottom sight pin, which I thought was a clever little addition. The elite bows are the compound bow with the illuminated sight with distance markers as seen in Far Cry 4 and 5, as well as the blood dragon bow, which looks strangely appropriate in some of the environments in New Dawn. As with previous games, players have the ability to use regular arrows, flaming arrows and explosive arrows. Regular arrows are your go-to ammunition choice. Fire arrows generally don't see much use in general gameplay, but several missions do make use of it as a tool for progression. Explosive arrows do exactly as the name suggests, but it's not something you probably need to use often, especially with better explosive weapons in the game. While an archaic weapon by this point, the bows still have a significant edge over other weapons. In Far Cry games, the bow has always been a one-hit kill silent weapon, allowing you to take down outposts without raising the alarm, and that gameplay mechanic still exists. The caveat is that the light RPG elements means that you need to have a bow of equal or greater level to the enemy to achieve that one-hit kill, and elite foes always take 2 body shots. Should you invest your resources into crafting bows, you probably have the most powerful weapon in the game at that level. This is because bows do the highest upfront damage, enough for one-hit kills for any hit on the body, whether it's in the torso, arms or legs. Compare this to other weapons which require headshot for maximum effect, and the bow is actually very forgiving. The relatively short distances involved in New Dawn's combat means that you can easily snipe enemies from afar and they will drop if touched by the arrow. It's so easy to use, it's arguably better than most guns in the game, especially as the firefights tend to be quite small scale, even in story missions and expeditions. The only weakness to the bow is that the arrows are not armor piercing, which means that they are unable to pierce helmets. For this reason, I do pack a sniper rifle loaded specifically with armor piercing rounds to deal with elite enforcers, but for everything else, the bow is almost a better choice all the time. I know that Far Cry has always been open to all playstyles, whether it's up close and personal or long distance with stealth, but I honestly found the combat to be a bit one-dimensional. As long as you had the proper weapon for your opponent's level, you could use one weapon for the whole game, and since the bow has the highest raw damage, it's arguably the best weapon in the game. There's not a whole lot to say about Far Cry New Dawn's archery mechanics and weapons that hasn't already been covered in every other Far Cry game so far. New Dawn is, after all, mostly a reskin of Far Cry 5 and a continuation of the story. And this isn't bad. It's a fun experience, albeit a very short one. The new sword launcher was certainly very interesting and actually quite useful should you choose to forego its stealth function at higher levels. Otherwise, I found myself going back to the bow as I always did, though this time it was more often my primary and only weapon in most fights, given that you're never really doing any huge fights that other weapons would shine in. Some of the cosmetics on the bows were interesting to look at, such as the batteries being taped above the compound holographic sight, and I really did enjoy seeing the Blood Dragon bow again in its neon glory. Overall, if you liked Far Cry 5, you'll like New Dawn. If you like the archery in Far Cry 5, you'll also like the archery in New Dawn. It would be interesting to see if this ever changes in future installments of the franchise, wherever it may take us. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Archery Popshots. This is NUSensei, and as usual, shoot straight and aim for your best.